Hey everyone, welcome back to Restoration Rescue. This week's video, we're going to be looking at everything that's wrong on the 454 SS. Alright, so like I said, we are going to be diving into this thing and seeing if we can find everything that's wrong with it. So what we need to do first is we're going to do a quick walk around outside of the car, and then we're going to hop in the interior and start looking around what's out here. I know I talked a little bit about what's going on in the intro video, but this is going to be a deeper in-depth of trying to find everything wrong with this truck so that we can make a list and get this thing where it needs to go. So we're going to look at everything that's wrong on the outside of the truck first. Like we see right here above the 454, we have a little bit of surface rust that's starting to form, so the paint's going to be having to take down, and we're going to have to go through that. We have a couple spots like that around the truck. Up here we have a little bit, and you can see in the paint that it's starting to flake up and just rot. We have a little bit up here and some here, but that's pretty much what it is on the outside of the truck. There's a couple dents and dings around it, but otherwise this truck is pretty sharp looking. Obviously, I talked about last week, the headlights and the lights need to be refurbished or replaced, but that's not a huge deal, huge issue. We got another spot of rust here. And then we have a couple dents and dings. We have a dent right here that we're gonna need to take care of, as well as there's one on the back tailgate down there at the bottom. But otherwise, this truck is a pretty good looking truck from the outside. Have a couple panels that need to be taken care of to get this thing perfect looking. So now let's hop on in the inside and show you what's wrong in there. So the interior is not horrible or in bad shape. It doesn't smell bad or anything, even though it was a smoker truck, as you can see. We have some cleaning to do. Maybe we can save and salvage this carpet. But first, let's go over to this door. This door is starting to break. This panel right here, it needs to be replaced. The plastic behind it is snapped. The door panel is popping out and needs to be replaced pretty much. And it's just sun faded, which obviously is going to happen with a 30-year-old truck. Come over here, some of the wood grain is starting to pop off. Again, I might just get rid of the wood grain. It's a little tacky, it's really 90s. It is cool to this truck a little bit, so maybe I could see if I could find a place to replace it. Also, our radio doesn't really work, but other than that, it runs pretty well, or the electronics work pretty well. We have the electronics on. You can see my windows work pretty well. Up, down. We have our passengers that works too. Up and down, at least on the driver's door. I haven't really tried the passenger door yet. We have this crack right here. That's easily fixed. This one panel comes out and we can replace it when we pop the dash out. Or not the entire dash, but at least this part right here. We have some wear on our seats. There's a hole in the bolster of the seat that I'm sitting on that we'll see in a second. But the passenger seat looks almost brand new. A clean and a vacuum should do this truck really well. And maybe some steam cleaning of the seats and just cleaning out some of the things that are in here. But let's take a look at this seat. And you can see that there's a hole in the bolster, and you can see the metal interior of the seat. So this one needs new foam and a new cloth, but otherwise this truck is pretty nice looking even on the interior. We do have to replace the headliner as it's ripped off and gone, but that shouldn't be too hard. Drop a couple panels and glue it on up there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to work on getting this thing up in the air and looking at everything underneath. All right, before we get it up into the air and get looking down there, we're gonna come back into the engine bay and look at this before we dive underneath it. So we have a clip that's missing up there on that panel, and we have a little bit of an oil leak that's coming right here from the head gasket. But otherwise, the truck is looking pretty good on the interior. We have some things that need to be replaced and looked over. Like our belt is a little glazed over, but not too bad. We're probably gonna come in here and replace some of the pulleys and whatnot, and just go through it and do everything over again and all the gaskets, because they are 30 years old. We'll probably replace some of the vacuum hoses or anything that's on here just so that it's running right, and look at all our wiring and make sure everything works. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this thing up in the air and start looking at it from underneath. So we've gotten the truck up on jack stands, so now it's time to remove the wheels. And as we can see up here, still again, no real rust in the wheel arches. This truck looks pretty sharp and in really good shape. And from here on the inside, you can see the frame looks pretty good. We're gonna get a better look at it once we get these tires off and we get right underneath. So let's take this rim right off. And we have our first drum. All right, you can see the frame. That thing is chipping a little bit, but that's just the undercoating. That thing looks really, really good. So does everything underneath here. The only thing that looks a little rusted is the drum brake, but that's gonna be okay. I think our plan is gonna change this to 4-wheel disc. Not that hard of a conversion. And we're gonna redo some other things on this suspension system. It does look almost like there is been bushings put in those, but it does look pretty good. So now we're gonna move up to one of the front rims. Again, like the back, you see not any rust, just a little bit of the undercoating chipping away. You can see we're glazed over here a little bit on our brake pad rotors, so the rotors are most likely going to need to be replaced. And our pads, the pads have a pretty good amount of life on them, but we don't know the condition of our rotors, so we're probably going to have to pop them off at some point and look at them and make sure that we're doing okay. Our lines look okay. Doesn't look like any rotting or anything that's going on in this truck. This truck looks like it's been well maintained. Like I said, the line looks good. Our caliper doesn't look bad. It's just rusted, and I just don't know the health of it. We might rebuild it. We might just, put a new rotor on it and bleed them and make sure that they're running okay. But our suspension doesn't look like it's leaking anything. That looks good. The underarms look pretty good. Might need to replace some bushings at some point, but that wouldn't be too terribly hard. As up here, we could see a little bit that it is starting to crack on that rubber, but that's not something that's too hard to replace. And we don't see any underlying leaking that's going on, at least on the frame. So let's go ahead and hop over to the other side and get that rim off and look under there as well. All right, so we were running into the same issues with the rotors here. A little bit of glazing over, so they're probably gonna need to be replaced. But the undercoating is peeling off as well over here. But again, this side looks pretty good as well. I don't know what this is. It looks like it's gotten chewed up and maybe fallen off, so we'll probably have to replace that. I think I'm missing it on the other side as well, because that part right here is all ripped off. But that, I should be able to get that and get that replaced pretty easy. Underneath looks really, really good. So now let's hop back to that back tire. Sorry everybody, Air Force One. All right guys, so as you saw, we just had a flyover from Air Force One. It's the third time today, so I think they're doing some touchdown drills at the local airport. But here we are at the disc brake, or the drum brake on this side, and it doesn't look too horrible. Looks like we have some life. We also have some spiders and whatnot, but let's take a look at the drum. And at the drum, again, we have some glazing. Not too horrible, but it's something that's gonna need to be addressed. So we're probably gonna end up replacing this with disc brakes. They do sell some kits, so we'll probably do 4-wheel disc around and replace the front ones with that kit. So up again on here, this is looking pretty good under here. We have a little bit of rusting back here on that, but that's not too bad. That can easily be taken care of, not too bad. Again, our frame is cracking a little bit, and that's just the undercoating, not the actual frame. Underneath is still looking pretty amazing. This truck looks like it didn't ever see water. This thing is in amazing shape. So let's look underneath the truck a little bit better and talk about what's going on there. All right, so we have our first little leak and it's a pretty big one. So we have some oil. This is the transmission pan, and you can see that it is covered in oil, and it looks like it is coming from up here and dousing everything in the back, but otherwise it doesn't look like it's leaking from the trans, only the engine. Not too big a deal. This could all be valve cover and it's dripping down, or it could be something else like oil pan gasket or something of that, but we'll have to take a deeper look into it. But as you can see, the underneath of this truck looks pretty immaculate. We have no rust whatsoever, and it just looks amazing. So now we're going to flip over to the back side and look back there. So the back of this thing looks just as good as the front. We may have a little bit of a rear differential leak. I think that's just water that's laying there, but it does look like there's some grime and dirt coming from the bottom of it, so it could be a leak. We'd have to take a look at it. But we do have original Bilstein stock shocks in the back and struts, so those are going to need to be taken care of. But we're going to probably do a lot of upgrades on this thing and make this thing amazing. We're definitely going to probably rebuild the engine, find that oil leak, but let's hop up to the top of the truck. All right, so as you can see, this truck does not have that much wrong with it. Yes, we have a couple engine oil leaks that we have to diagnose and find out where they're coming from and fix, but we're probably going to rebuild that engine anyway. We're going to probably look at rebuilding that transmission, especially because it has 140,000 miles on it, just to be safe, especially if we're going to add a little bit more power to this engine. And we got to do brakes and suspension upgrades, as well as take care of some body work. It is not going to be as extensive as the C10. Thank goodness we don't have to do as much rust repair, so we won't spend 8 months welding on this truck at least. This one will probably be in the background. Every once in a while we're going to be working on it. I want to keep it driving, and I want to get it registered and on the road so I can drive it around and enjoy it while I'm building it. But that is going to be a wrap for this week's video. We'll see you guys next Saturday when we're probably going to be working back on the C10, doing some more welding and getting that thing ready to get put on the frame so I can start getting that thing ready to drive around. And we have 2 awesome trucks that we could be driving around pretty soon. So if you aren't subscribed, do consider subscribing. Make sure you guys smash that like button and share it with your friends so we get out to more people. And again, we'll see you guys next Saturday.